From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The Bolivarian National Guard of Venezuela has held a military exercise in Caracas. President Nicolas Maduro welcomed the military that once again reaffirmed its loyalty to him and the government of Venezuela. This event is part of the preparations for the bicentennial civic military operation of Angostura that will take place between February 10th to 15th. For the first time, the event will be held in honor of Simón Bolívar and the 1821 Congress of Angostura, which contributed to the independence of Venezuela.
The recent chain of social, political and public events push us from simply guaranteeing citizens' safety to ensuring national peace, sovereignty, prosperity and development in this country. The Bolivarian National Guard of Venezuela is the backbone of our union's integrity.
And supporters of President Nicolas Maduro have taken to the streets across cities in the states of Miranda and Carabobo to oppose foreign intervention. The president of the National Constituent Assembly joined the demonstration in Carabobo, where he reaffirmed Venezuela will not allow any foreign intervention or coup attempt.
The United States wants to invade us. They clearly want to do this, and a good part of the European Union is helping them to achieve this. Colombia is also helping them to achieve this, the Colombian government and the Brazilian government. But they haven't thought of something, that this nation is also fighting, that this nation with its military won't accept anyone or anything, that this nation says that we are free, that this nation won't give up.
And in the country is business as usual, despite the mainstream media reporting of unrest. The streets of Caracas are calm as Venezuelans carry out their daily tasks, despite news that violent acts are happening every day. These are images from the La Pastora neighborhood. And on Thursday, all workers in Venezuela and what they called a great anti-imperialist march to demand respect for self-determination. Our correspondent reports from Caracas.
Speaking in one voice, workers of the state on PDVSA made clear their anti-imperialist position. They called attention of U.S. plans to dismantle the Venezuelan constitution.
We are a sovereign people, and we decide that Nicolas Maduro will be our president, because sovereignty resides in the people.
Protesters say the embargo imposed by Donald Trump's government against the oil subsidiary Citgo reveals their neoliberal intentions. The new U.S. sanctions will block $7 billion in Venezuelan goods and $11 billion in oil exports for the year 2019.
Today we can see how the U.S. aims to snatch our wealth. Today the world sees how the USA has lowered its mask, and we can see that the whole world supports the Venezuelan people.
The Venezuelan government continues to raise its voice to denounce the attempted coup d'etat that is being carried out in the nation. President Nicolas Maduro has urged dialogue and respect for the constitution and has denounced the U.S. intentions to appropriate Venezuela's wealth. Venezuelans say they want to live in peace and stop the intervention.
The Secretary General of the United Nations has again emphasized his commitment to peace and dialogue in Venezuela. Through his spokesman, Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the UN recognizes the elected government of Venezuela. Guterres added that his officers are ready to assist in achieving political solution to the situation in the Latin American country.
The Secretary General reiterated that what he's already said publicly in his letter, which is basically his concern regarding the crisis in the country and the impact that it is having with the Venezuelan people. He said the United Nations is ready to increase its activities in Venezuela in the areas of humanitarian assistance and development. However, he said that for this, the United Nations needs the consent and the cooperation of the government. The Secretary General again underscored that recognizing governments is not for the Secretariat and for member states, and he noted that his relations with member states He respects decisions taken particularly by the General Assembly and the Security Council. And he reiterated in his letter the availability of his good offices to help find a political solution to the crisis.
And a UN human rights expert has rejected the U.S. sanctions against Venezuela. Idris Jaisari has warned that the measures can lead to starvation and medical shortages. He says sanctions are adding to the crisis and are a violation of international law. And Venezuela's ambassador to South Africa says it's comforting to have allies in Africa in the wake of political tension fueled by the United States and its allies. Our correspondent Matuva has a story.
The political tensions in Venezuela have gone beyond the country's borders, with nations expressing support for President Nicolas Maduro. The support comes against a wave of disapproval from the United States and its allies. Venezuela's foreign mission in South Africa says there's an attempted coup in Venezuela.
This is a coup d'etat. This is a coup d'etat in development in Venezuela in this moment, with United States in front of the coup d'etat, and with the leader of the opposition in this moment, Juan Guaido, of the United States. And unfortunately, some countries in Latin America follow them.
The head of the Venezuela's mission in South Africa says attempts by the United States to destabilize Latin America is a pattern that reminds her of other regions where the US got involved in domestic politics.
This was the same in Iraq, was the same in Libya, in all the countries that when US intervened. It's the same plan.
When asked why the United States was keen on removing the current government in Venezuela, she says the reasons are no secret.
The response is simple: our natural resources. Our natural resources and the political difference between Trump and Nicolas Maduro. But also is the same difference with the Commander Chavez. The problem is we are a democratic government working to socialism, and we have a lot of natural resources.
Ambassador Moreno Marida lamented that mainstream media did not cover the Venezuela story objectively, and this, she says, causes even more tensions.
The media only show the information the information of the position, and it's not true. And yesterday I spoke with one journalist here, and I asked him why you didn't show the images in Venezuela with the people in support of our President Nicolas Maduro.
Venezuela's government believes it's the overwhelming sanctions from the supporters of self-proclaimed President Juan Guaido that are worsening the situation. Matuba Masachi, Telesur, Pretoria.
Supporters of Maduro have held demonstrations in Barcelona. Protesters gathered outside the European Union headquarters in the city after the body recognized Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido as interim president. Representatives of the pro-Catalan independent CUP party, Maria Sirvent, said that the people of Venezuela have already voted and that there must be respect for that result. And also in London, pacifist groups and trade unions organized an emergency rally to show their support and solidarity with the Venezuelan government. Hundreds of people gathered at the headquarters of the National Education Union to reject Guaido's claim to be interim president and the U.S. intervention in Venezuela. Grenada citizens also staged a demonstration at the Venezuelan embassy to express their solidarity. They're calling for the protection of the Caribbean as a zone of peace and for respect for Venezuela's sovereignty. The U.S. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has said her country is headed down a dangerous path with regards to intervening Venezuela. Gabbard said the United States needs to stay out of the country and let the Venezuelan people determine their own future.
But the United States should not be in the business of intervening, of picking who should lead their country, and we certainly should not be threatening military action. Venezuela poses no threat to the United States. Congress has not authorized the United States to go to war in Venezuela. And there's no justification for our country to violate the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people.
But the U.S. continues threatening the Venezuelan government. The National Security Advisor John Bolton says Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro could end up in the Guantanamo prison complex if he doesn't leave power. During a radio interview, Bolton advised Maduro to have a, quote, long and quiet retirement on a beautiful beach far away from Venezuela. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Residents in the Brazilian town of Brumadinho have held a mass for the victims of the dam collapse. Holding candles, they prayed for the victims and their relatives. At least 110 people died and 238 remain missing. Only 71 victims have been identified so far. The environmental impact in the area is still to be evaluated. Residents along the riverbanks say the fish they relied on for food are floating dead to the surface. And victims of the tragedy are urging authorities to help and put an end to stop pollution. The contamination has extended for 650 kilometers along the Carabobo River. The Vale Dam collapse is now considered Brazil's worst ever industrial accident. Lawmakers in Brazil have been sworn in Congress. This is the first session of the Congress since Jair Bolsonaro took office. Around 30 parties have a seat in the chamber, where the right-wing forces hold a majority, which could ease the implementation of Bolsonaro's neoliberal agenda. New increases in the prices for basic services such as electricity have begun this Friday in Argentina. Our correspondent Sabrina Roth reports.
This Friday, new price increases have been established in Argentina. Among them, the tariff for the electricity service that on average will increase in 26%, and in some cases up to 31%. But this is just one of the price increases planned for this year. The government announced that the total increase will reach 55%. This is taking place while around 10,000 users are still affected by power cuts. Let's remember that this week the temperatures reached 45 degrees Celsius and more than 450,000 users were affected by power cuts. The government says the increases are for the companies to improve the service with proper investments. Since Mauricio Macri took office, the cost of the electric service has increased on a 1,300%, and users complain that these investments are not happening. Other prices that are increasing are those of gas cylinders and also the price of some medicines in a 5%. Public transport prices will increase again this month. The most affected people by this are the working class.
We thank Sabrina for that report. And ahead of Sunday's elections in El Salvador, the Electoral Court has been distributing electoral packages in the country's 14 regions. Let's take a look at the preparations in this report from our correspondent.
The 19 municipalities of San Salvador are receiving the electoral material, which will be distributed at the polling stations 24 hours before the elections next February 3rd. On Saturday, we started the municipalities with the second stage of the collection center of the polling stations. The third stage will be on the night of Sunday, February 3rd, the collection of these packages to bring them back to each municipal electoral board. And on Monday, February 4th, and at 7 in the morning, we begin to receive here to all the municipalities the packages in return together with the respective copies. The transfer of the electoral packages are under the supervision of the Attorney General Office, the Electoral Monitoring Board, and the Human Rights Office. The custody of the security of the electoral material is in charge of the National Civil Police. The operation is going to be distributed for the dough to the different polling stations that are in El Salvador in the different municipalities, and each to put a distribution route. We will set security of 4 police elements to ensure that we'll reach its destination. The Supreme Electoral Tribunal claims that they are prepared at 100% of the presidential voting day. After test process and drills, it's only necessary to refine certain difficulties in the transmission of the data. We have to fix some bugs that has been detected with some details still that they are mentioning, which are trying to correct yet the system, which basically is given by the issue of the transmission from the points that are located by the company that has been contracted. The electoral silence started this Thursday as mandated by electoral code. Another provision that must be fulfilled is a dry law, which prohibits the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverage one day before, during and the day after the elections.
Ernesto Ábalos, Telesur, El Salvador.
And international observers are in the country to monitor the process. Our correspondent Ernesto Ábalos has more.
El Salvador Supreme Electoral Court has announced that 1,595 station polls are ready for Election Day. Most of them are located in schools where police forces have already been deployed. New measures have also been taken to avoid any technology attack by hackers against the official website of the Supreme Electoral Court. It has also been reported that over 1,400 national and international observers will monitor the process. Salvadorans living abroad have returned to the country to exercise their right to vote.
We thank Ernesto for that report. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arraza has arrived in Barbados for an official visit. Arraza was welcomed by Prime Minister Mia Mottley. The two delegations are expected to revise their cooperation bilateral agreements and discuss different ways to ensure peace in the Caribbean region. The fourth International Conference for the World Balance concluded this Thursday in Havana with the signature of the World Council Declaration. The document expresses deep concerns about the policies that promotes conflicts and ignores multilateralism.
Intellectuals from around the world gathered in Havana for a 4-day conference to debate about the challenges Latin America and the Caribbean is facing as the region fights to keep its independence and peace. The event focused on the fight against the U.S. interventionism attempts.
I think that we have to work hard, following Fidel's advice about promoting ideas and awareness in our people. We have to do this, but now with the help of technology and new platforms. These are the platforms our enemies are using to spread lies and fake news. We have to use these platforms to spread the truth about what is happening, as too many people are confused about this.
The professor and member of Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly, Adán Chávez, talked about the U.S. intervention attempts in his country. He said Chávez supporters will not give up their fight to defend socialism, regardless the difficult circumstances.
We have to join against imperialism and for a better world. We have to follow the motto that has joined us here, together and for the good of all, convinced that we want a better world that can only be achieved through socialism.
The fourth International Conference for World Balance coincided with the 166th anniversary of the birth of Cuban thinker José Martí. The historian Eusebio Leal says that Martí's ideas promote equality and balance among the people.
Martí's ideas came from his convictions and Christianity, from the love he spread. He said that in the hardest fights, we have to love justice and fight against our enemies.
The final declaration rejects interventionism against any country of the region, as well as rejection of any attempt to destabilize legitimate governments.
We want to reassure our solidarity with the Venezuelan people and its government. We reject any coup attempts pushed by Washington. Venezuela's domestic affairs should be solved by their people through dialogue, something that President Nicolas Maduro has asked for.
The declaration also rejects any attempts of political persecution, demands former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva to be freed, and congratulates Cuba on the 60th anniversary of the revolution.
Fragments of what appears to be a meteorite were found after strong explosions reportedly rang out in western Cuba. Social media lit up as several people in the province of Pinar del Rio and nearby communities reported seeing a smoke trail in the sky and feeling strong tremors. Some also reported seeing a bright blue explosion in the sky. Authorities are still investigating. And Bolivian President Evo Morales has launched the International Year of Indigenous Languages at the UN headquarters in New York. The international seminar will showcase the world's ancient tongues and highlight the need to conserve them. Members of indigenous communities have attended the event. Morales will also meet with the UN Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly.
El Año Internacional de los Idiomas Indígenas.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 32 Palestinians have been injured by Israeli gunfire as they protested for the 45th week at the Gaza border. They were protesting Israel's continued occupation of Gaza. They are also demanding the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes from which they were driven in 1948 to make way for the new state of Israel. Around 250 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza since March 2018. And with less than 3 weeks to go before Nigeria heads to crucial presidential elections, security remains the biggest issue on the minds of many voters. Boko Haram and other militant groups in the northeast of the country have threatened to attack polling stations on the election day. The region has seen an upsurge in militant attacks in the recent months against both civilians and soldiers, despite claims by the government that they are on the verge of defeating Boko Haram. Former President of Ivory Coast, Laurent Gbagbo, is set to be released by the International Criminal Court following an order by the court's appeal judges. Gbagbo was acquitted of war crimes charges in January but remained in detention as a result of objections and an appeal raised by the prosecution team. He stood accused of orchestrating a wave of violence that claimed over 3,000 lives after a disputed election in 2010.
And Mr. Blake, good day.
The National Union of Mental of South Africa has opposed the proposed electricity tariff increase by the state power company. The union says the increase will lead to an increase in the cost of basic food items. It added that the increase will also affect small and medium businesses, leading to job losses. The state power company is considering a 45% tariff increase in the next 3 years.
We know what this tariff increase will mean to the poor, will mean to the working class who are struggling already with high cost of electricity. But at the same time, we know what will this do to the industry, to an already ailing economy. We know that once ESCOM is granted this increase, companies are going to retrench as part of their strategy to deal with cost of doing business. As a result, the rate of unemployment in South Africa will continue to grow higher and higher.
Women in Afghanistan fear that any peace deal between the Taliban and the U.S. could erode hard-won freedoms. In the nearly 2 decades since the Taliban lost power, rules that barred women from education and work have been chipped away. They fear that if the Taliban return to power, their rights will be eroded. Filipino Catholics living in the United Arab Emirates are getting ready for Pope Francis's upcoming visit. Worshippers at the St. Francis of Assisi Church in Dubai attended a mass dedicated to the victims of an attack in the Philippines that killed 20 people. The attack was claimed by the Islamic State. Pope Francis's visit is aimed at promoting interreligious dialogue and tolerance.
Pope Francis, he always gives a message of forgiveness and mercy. So I think we have to put it in heart, all people, as government and leaders, that to be merciful, to forgive. So because if we are merciful, if we forgive, there's no conflict, no bad relationship as long as we understand and support each other. So I think it's a very relevant and the right time for us to have this message.
It's so amazing and I'm so happy. This is my first time that I attend this Mass of Holy Mass of Pope Francis, and we are very blessed. Out of how many people? Thousands of people, 120,000 of people, and we are blessed we get the ticket. And in fact, I just get my ticket today.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.